Hey, creative people, welcome back to another episode of the Creative Legacy Art Podcast. My name is Amanda Downs and I'm your host. And today we have a very special guest with us, Patricia Powell. She is a author and she will be talking to us about her book and her creative process. Thank you so much and enjoy.
Yeah, no, it's no problem. So essentially, my mom had me read a bunch of her romance novels. And what that did was allow me to get an idea of how different authors write. And so I learned, it wasn't necessarily like, yeah, you want to read stuff that you are interested in.
Right.
But I wasn't just reading for that. I was reading like, okay, so some authors are more descriptive than others. Some use cuss words, some don't. Some are very detailed, some are not. And so it's more of just giving you an idea of, okay, this is what's out there. What is your style?
Right.
What do you want to do? And so it's the same thing. Like, you can say that with movies, art, or like, well, art, that is art.
Okay.
But like with anything, like movies, TV, anything like that, you essentially want to immerse yourself in whatever that art form is, because then you get an idea of what's already out there. And that can also inspire you and be like, oh, you may be like, oh, I like this versus, because I mean, like for me, certain scenes, like I want more detail than just they kissed.
Okay.
Versus, you have the really like every detail you can imagine, where you don't, and to me it's like, I don't want it to the point where I can't use my own imagination.
Gotcha.
But it's trying to find your balance within that, because different writers write differently, obviously, of what works for them. And so that was one thing that my mom definitely, she was like, because she has a bunch of books that she reads.
Right. And it also kind of depends on, like, again, like you were talking about before, the feeling that you're trying to go for. So sometimes it's going to require more detail than others, and just I guess focusing on, like, what areas are important that you need to describe and what aren't. And also with your audience as well.
Well, I mean, like one author that I remember reading about was actually like, I think she spent like so many pages describing a pair of shoes. And I was just like, okay, great. But then you also have like Ayn Rand's, nothing against the books or anything, but with Atlas Shrugged. There's a lot of long monologues in that book. And so it's the question of, what do you like to do? What are you okay with? Because what you tend to read is what you're going to want to write.
Gotcha.
And then that goes for anything of, whatever you watch, like TV shows or movies, if you do plays, different stuff like that, any kind of, whatever it is, it's what you're interested in is typically going to be what you're going to end up doing.
Okay. Cool. And I have heard that, and I'm hearing it again with you, is the saying that the more you read, the better of a writer you become. Yeah. Okay, and so tell us about your experience with writer's block. Do you ever get writer's block?
I guess sometimes, yeah, but it's not. I was never a person who wanted to be what I call a career writer. Somebody who literally would just write to just have so many books out. It's kind of one of the reasons why it's probably a good idea I never actually got like a contract, or like went the traditional publishing route, because essentially you'd have a contract that you have to complete so many books, and I just kind of write whenever I have the inspiration. And so I think the thing is with writer block, and mind you, I've also watched a lot of Hallmark movies. So I've seen that in those things, and usually stuff has to happen. But I think the biggest thing about it is when that happens, it's because there's other stuff going on in a person's life that you cannot force creativity. It's just not something that you can do. You have to let it come when it's gonna come. Like, you have to be open to it, but, because anything can spark creativity. And so I think that's the biggest thing about it, of just like, when somebody faces writer's block, it's kind of give yourself grace, give yourself time, go do something else. Don't be on yourself about it, because that's going to probably make it worse.
Right.
And just kind of, put it aside and know that that's okay.
That's good advice. Do you ever feel stagnant in, I guess, like with creativity? You already answered that question, but like For people who feel stagnant in life in general, how does that happen?
I think you get too used to your routine. I think, because I mean, I've gotten to those points. I remember before the pandemic, there would have been times where it's like I'd have these routines that I would go and do of just like go to a life group on Monday nights. And I just realized at a point that it was like, this is just what I do every Monday. Not that I didn't want to do it, but it was just more of like, I'm doing these things because I'm doing them. And so it kind of, the pandemic in a way kind of helped with that, because it was also this reminder of, those aren't things I have to do, they're things I get to do. And so I think when you look at stuff differently and you change your routine, that kind of helps. I don't know that I'm really, like right now, I'm not stagnant just because I've got so much stuff that I'm doing. But at the same time, it's just, you know, sometimes it's just the need for growth.
Okay. So what advice would you give a person who is feeling stagnant in life or in their art career or writing? What would you give them? Now, not that you are a professional of any sort, but just like, you know, just as a friend, what advice would you give them?
I would say explore whatever your other interests are. You know, people have more than one interest, and if you're not entirely sure, you know, think about what you do during your daily life, and just what are the things that you regularly do, and just kind of like if you're into video games or you know, watching TV, you know, different stuff like just those types of things of what else. Like I guess it would be like if you could do anything else, talent or no talent, whatever, what would you want to do? You know, ask yourself, are you happy with what you're doing? If you're not, what could you do that would make you happy?
I feel like that's some good advice as well, yeah. When you are writing, do you ever experience a flow state? That's the theme of this podcast portion right now. And so to me, a flow is a great state because you are, while you're creating, you feel as if the idea or the movement, or depending on what you're creating, is coming through you, not from you, if that makes sense. You're just like a vessel. So I just find it interesting to think about, and I find it interesting to hear like what different artists' experience it is or what it feels like for them when they're in that flow state.
I think for me, it comes when, like, so the thing that I'll read is just, I have these moments where, like, the hyper focus is kind of there, and I'll just get so into what I'm writing that which is not always healthy because I'm like, hours go by. But essentially what it comes down to is that it's just, I really get into what I've done, and I really like how something's come out, whether it's dialogue or description for something, and I'm just like, oh, this is perfect, like, oh, I like this thing, or, you know, whatever it is. And so it's kind of, I guess to me, that's how it is. I don't know that, I mean, it could be something that stuff is happening through me at that time, but I think it's more of just the creativity is just really flowing, and I'm just in a really good place. And I mean, it could, I'd never even heard of that terminology before until I listened to or watched a podcast. And so it was just kind of, it's, yeah, I mean, I guess that for me, because then it's just, you know, you've really, I guess, so to speak, hit it out of the park. Because you're just like, you're there.
Yes.
You've done what you wanted to do. Yes.
One of my friends, another person who was interviewed on this podcast, Atticus, he said that flow to him feels like discovery. And I thought that was such a good observation, that it's like you're literally discovering something in real time as you're discovering what you can do in real time as you're working, and you just, sometimes you kind of like are surprised by yourself, or just surprised by that thing, like, oh yeah, I can, for me maybe, I can paint wrinkles in a clothes, you know?
No, I mean, I could actually,
You know?
I can understand that because you're enjoying your talent.
Yeah.
Like you're not having like the whole writer's block or artist block, whatever you want to call it for anything that you're blocked with creativity wise.
Yeah.
But it's like you're enjoying what you're doing at that moment, and it is just like I can understand the flow state aspect now in that way of just like it's literally flowing from you into whatever you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just a smooth thing.
Yeah.
So.
And I want to also ask a more detailed question about when you write. And just because I'm nosy, and I just want to know. So, like for me personally, like I do a little writing on the side, not anything, you know, professionally. But sometimes when I write, like if I'm writing a dialogue, I'll hear it in my mind and I'll just write it out. Or I might see, visualize a picture of two people, you know, maybe they're running down the street or whatever, and that's how I get my ideas, and I'm just writing what I'm hearing or seeing in my mind. Is that how it is for you when you write, or is it does it come to you in a different way?
I think it just comes out. I think it's more of just like, for me, for Patricia, for the character, it's what I would say. But I mean, that's why I was like the whole thing about learning how guys talk, because I was just assuming. But no, to me, it's just, oh, this would be perfect for this person to say after this or something. Like, it's just, you know, I think it's just dialogue that just, it's kind of like just when you're talking to somebody and it just naturally comes out. I don't necessarily know that maybe I do hear it. I can't, at this point, I don't know. But it's more of just like, it's just dialogue that'll be, like, say if I'm somewhere and I'll come up with the whole dialogue thing of what I want to say, I'd be like, oh, this is perfect, and then this is perfect, and then just kind of keep writing it out, and then, yeah, so.
Okay, cool. I just thought that was interesting, you know, just to see how writers come up with their ideas and how they get them out.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching an interview of J.K. Rowling.
Rowling, yeah.
Rollins did
I don't know if that's how you say her last name, J.K. Rowling.
Rowling. The Harry Potter.
Yes. You'll have to figure that one out later on.
She is such a very interesting person to hear her interviews when she talks about her process for writing Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just saying that, you know, the characters talked to her and she would just write out what they were saying, and it was very interesting. So, but yeah, I just thought that was a cool interview. But yeah, so moving on, we'll go to what work of art, or which book, I would say, which work are you most proud of? And this can be with your writing, this can be with your being an advocate, with your screenplay, whatever work. What would you say you're most proud of?
I guess I would have to more say Cowboy Dreams, even though it's right here. Just because it's so personal. But it's also just kind of the message that I want to get out to people of just like, because it's, I can't even say it loosely based on me. It's based on me in a way. My whole thing is I've just never met a race car driving cowboy before. So, though apparently I've talked to one person who has, so there you go.
Awesome.
But no, I mean, it's just, the thing about it with this book is that I don't know that even though I've written the screenplay for it and all that, I don't know that I truly ever actually saw this thing coming to life in such a way of, when I wrote this, as I wrote the screenplay, it's actually picturing these characters and not just picturing them, but knowing that somebody's going to portray them at some point. And to take that, to take your imagination and and turn it into something that's real. I mean, everybody, this happens obviously all the time because you have screenplays for different movies, all that stuff, somebody's imagination. But when it's you Like, that's the whole thing about it. And so I think for me, what I'm most excited about and proud of for this is that it's going to change people's lives in such a way that when they see Trisha Perkins, a lot of people within the autism spectrum, they're going to see themselves in her, obviously, like, in different ways, but it's more of just, it gives a different perspective. Because essentially in the book, I have, like, so Clay Gibson, hot NASCAR driver guy, he's wanting to pursue Trisha, who's this awkward girl, never had a boyfriend, all that stuff. But the whole thing about it is he sees her, and that scares her. And so it's kind of this whole thing of she's never been seen before in such a way. And so it's kind of just, I think for me, when I wrote it, it was just like a fun, like, oh, if I could write, you know, my dream thing happen, you know, because I can control to a point, because your characters still control how stuff goes.
They do.
But I think at the end of it, it's also just more of, I get to show Trisha what life could actually be like if she lets go of her fear.
That's pretty deep. Yeah. You were talking about autism, and that's something that we haven't talked about a lot yet. And I want to talk about that for a minute, just to give people who don't have any experience with someone who has autism, or they don't know, you know,
Yeah.
Can you talk about it? Tell people
In what way?
what is autism? What, you know, what do you think people should know about it?
Well, there's a lot of stuff.
Well, I would say, you know, what is one of the most important things that a person, that you feel like people should know about autism that they don't?
That it's not a negative thing.
Okay.
That, like, because growing up, like, so I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome when I was a sophomore in high school. But I never saw it as a positive until last few years, I guess. And so it was more of just hints that, like, my things about the hyperfocus stuff, because I know a lot of people can't do that. And so it's almost like a superpower in a way. But no, it's just something that I have as a quality for me. I guess it's more of just, my thing is everybody processes information differently, even people within the spectrum. Yet, people want to put people with autism in a box. Like, you have to look a certain way, you have to act a certain way, whatever it is, in order for you to fit that. Mm-hmm. But that's not true. That's not, like, there are so many different people that are within the spectrum that it's just, like, people, like, I remember reading a thing on people.com that it was one of the housewives of Orange County. She was saying that her son, 2-year-old, was diagnosed with autism, and she thought it was a death sentence. Mm-hmm. And it was just like, no, it's just, that's how he processes information. Fortunately, she since learned, and she was able to change that and just say, like, she was just given a lot of misinformation. But unfortunately, a lot of people are still under the impression that in order to be autistic, you have to fit a certain thing. Like, you have movies, like you have the show, like The Good Doctor. You know, I've seen that, and I'm sure there are some people who are like that. I'm not. But you have that, you have Rain Man, you have just other things. I think Atypical, if that's still going. I don't have Netflix, so I don't know. But I guess that's the whole thing with it. Like, and that's what I found with the Cowboy Dreams thing, is that it's not even just a way to express myself, but it's a way to be a voice. Mm-hmm. That I just didn't ever know that I was going to end up being a voice for. Because, I mean, for me, I was just writing it thinking this would be a good story. But then it's just like, no, like, this can actually really help other people. Because they can see themselves in Trisha as this person, as, like, as awkward as she is, there's still this guy who wants to pursue her. You know, and I think that sucks when you had a cold in your nose. But I don't know, I guess for me, because a lot of it's a social thing. Like, Asperger's, autism, however you want to call it, like, all that stuff, it's just social misunderstandings for things. Mm-hmm. That's what it really comes down to, is people within that community, myself included at times, it's just, we don't always understand what we're supposed to do socially.
Okay.
And because we don't, we get judged for that. And so one of the terms that often comes up is masking. And so part of that is that we're trying to, which mind you, I probably masked, I don't know. But I mean, I've learned a lot of stuff, or so much stuff this year and different things. But a lot of times people within the spectrum will mask. And that's essentially copying people who are neurotypical, meaning people who aren't on the spectrum and don't have any other like neurodiverse stuff going on, but just like copying people and trying to look and be perceived as normal. And so they're not being their authentic self because they don't feel like they can fit in because they're going to be judged.
Right.
And so essentially, that's, I think, the biggest thing with all of this stuff, because what you see in the book, and obviously the screenplay is based on the book, is you see how Trisha is, how she doesn't quite get everything. But at the same time, she gives people a different way to look at life. And so what that does is it just opens up Clay's eyes, just opens up other people's eyes of like, because you have her best friend Kate Branson, that is just, they've grown up together, you know, just best friends. And so she understands, but it's just more of like, that's the whole thing. That is just, a lot of times, I think people within the spectrum just feel misunderstood. And I can't, like the thing that's coming to mind right now is my dad's whole thing about the 7 habits and the habit of seek first to understand, then to be understood. Yeah. And so that's the whole thing. I don't think people want to understand other people who are different from them sometimes. They want what's comfortable.
Yeah, that's easy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Creative Legacy Art Podcast. If you like this video or if you like this podcast, please subscribe, join, do all the things, and share, above all, share so that we can grow as a podcast and get the word out and help as many people as we possibly can. Have a great day, and remember to stay strong, stay positive, and keep creating.